Hi everyone, this is Blackfoot Raven, and it's time to make another video. Now, as I said, when I was feeling up to it, I'd make another video again, and frankly, I just wanted to make this video. It's going to be a Card 5 Vanguard deck profile. The deck is proxied. I'm waiting for the cards to come in, but I thought I'd get the deck profile out now. We are going to be doing a Gear Chronicle deck profile. So the start of the deck is the starter. I believe this is Timeline Draco Kid. Basically, it's like Gear Gunner Draco Kid, except you don't need a G unit in the Vanguard or the Rearguard circle, so it's the basic Grade 3 Searcher. Now, the trigger lineup is very standard. 4 heal triggers, 4 draw triggers, and 8 critical triggers. So, next for the Grade 1s is 2 copies of Steam Girl Sinclair. I believe that's her name. She's the Soul Blast 2 draw card. Pretty useful, just in case if you have to ride this. I don't know all of their names. I'm still trying to remember most of them. I know like the higher grade ones, but for the New Age Perfect Guard. Now what this one does is, if you have another copy of this in the drop zone when it's placed in the Guardian Circle, you unflip a card in the damage. So if you have to ride it, I like using Sinclair so I can already have a Perfect Guard in the drop zone so I can start unflipping damage. Then we have 4 10k attackers if you have a G unit in your Vanguard or your Rearguard circle, well, in your Vanguard or in your G zone face up. You say 10k attacker. Then we have for this badass looking dragon. What he does is when he's placed in the Rearguard, you reveal a Grade 3 and search for a Chronojet Dragon, well, a card with Chronojet in its name, and then you discard a card from your hand. So basically he's a Grade 3 Searcher, and also you can discard this card when you would normally be performing Stride, and his grade gets +2. So now we're going to move on into the Grade 2s. 3 10k attackers. Frankly, their 10k attackers are useful in general. I find them very helpful in picking off some of the weaker rear guards or the more important Grade 2s in some of the other decks. Like with Battle Sisters is a new deck I've been seeing with some of my friends. So I find this to be useful to pick off the weaker units so they don't cause an issue. And it's also helping on turn 2 if I can ride this. Then we have 4 12k attackers, because, well, 12k attackers, if you have a G unit in your Vanguard or face up in the Generation Zone, it is a 12k attacker. Then we have 4 copies of Steam Knight Amber. So what he does is when he attacks the Vanguard, and if he is boosted, if you have a G unit face up in your Vanguard circle or face up in your Generation Zone, and it's a generation break of 1, if I'm correct. Yes, because you only have to have 1. If he does, you can counterblast 1 and target one of your opponent's rear guards and send it to the bottom of the deck. Yeah, this deck doesn't retire, it just sort of... I consider it's like it's reverting time, like sending the units back into where they originated from, the deck. So next we're going to move into the Grade 3s. So next is 4 copies of Fate Wheel Dragon. What Fate Wheel Dragon does is if he's placed in the Vanguard circle, and I believe, yeah, he has a generation break of 1. When he attacks, your opponent cannot call Grade 1s to the Guardian circle. And when he's placed in the Vanguard circle, you can Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1, and then your opponent, and you target one of your opponent's rear guards and send it to the bottom of the deck. Then we have 4 copies of Chronojet Dragon. What Chronojet Dragon does is he has a generation break of 2. Yeah, generation break of 2. When this unit attacks, it gains 5,000 power, and your opponent cannot use Grade 1s to guard. And it also has the ability, if this unit gets strided on... That sounded really perverted. Oh, never mind. But if this unit is in the Vanguard circle when you perform Stride, you can counterblast 1 and target one of your opponent's rear guards and send it to the bottom of the deck. So now we're going to move on into the Grade 4s. It's weird saying that, but now I have a good reason to use these. But first we're going to start off with 4 copies of Interdimensional Dragon Ragnarok. Yeah, I think it's Interdimensional Dragon Ragnarok. What Interdimensional Dragon Ragnarok does is he has the basic rule of the G units is you must discard the stride phase is between your main phase 1 and then your ride phase. So if you and your opponent both have a grade 3, kind of like the ruling with Legion, you can discard cards from your hand as long as their grade equals up to 3 to perform stride. What he does is when he's in the Vanguard circle and he attacks, you can counterblast 1 and turn a copy of this guy in your G zone face up. And if you have at least 2 face-up G units, well, when he gets turned face up, he gains, I think it's plus 5,000 power? No, your opponent can't use grade 1s to guard, and if you have at least 2 face-up G units, he gains a crit. Basically, this is a game-finishing unit, is how I find it. I use him later game normally, because like Ragnarok, symbol of the end of the world, kind of thing. Then we have 4 copies of Interdimensional Chronos Command Dragon. I actually remember that. What Interdimensional Chronos Command Dragon does is he actually has a pretty powerful ability. Is I believe when this unit attacks the Vanguard and is boosted, you can counterblast 2, Soul Blast 1, and discard 1 card from your hand. Now I know that sounds like a heavy cost, but you can send every single one of your opponent's rear guards back to the deck. Now, I know I've had some people say, like, Hero Chronicle has the issue of, like, well, if the units aren't destroyed, what's the good thing about sending them back into the deck? Okay, the good things about sending units back into the deck is decks that rely on stuff being in the drop zone, like Grand Blue or Musketeers, or, well, the Enactor in general. Not more cards for Legion, as there are still big threats of Legion, like Draconic Overlord the X. He's kind of a scary card. Also, fills up your opponent's deck more with non-trigger units, so now for decks that tend to search out a lot, and basically in a couple of turns after they're on a grade 3, suddenly their entire deck is just filled with triggers, filling them back up with non-trigger units will actually be helpful to you. So, less of a chance, so you can be a bit more lenient with your guarding. So that's why I find it to be useful. Hero Chronicle in itself is actually a really good deck. How I found it's very much a control kind of deck. Like, you control the board until you really want to drop one of your big boss monsters. Like, obviously, these two. But until then, you have, like, ways to control the field. You want to try to be very conservative. Because if you play the deck how I play it, well, how I feel the deck is supposed to be played in that sort of control aspect, you build up a giant hand really quickly. So I feel like this is definitely one of the most dangerous decks in the meta for Vanguard right now. But that's for another video. Now, I have a question for you guys. If you want me to, I can make an updated version of my Draconic Overlord the X deck with the new stuff that's come out. If you want me to, post it in the comments. So I've been your host, Blackwood Raven, and I feel it's good to be back. Later.